Cleveland, Ohio AA Archives, the Rockefeller Archives in Sleepy Hollow, New York, and the Chester H. Kirk Collection on Alcoholism and Alcoholics Anonymous at Brown University's John Hay Library in Providence, Rhode Island. Taken together, these documents tell an almost day-by-day story of how AA survived and grew during its early flying blind period, right up until April 10th, 1939, the day on which the authors published the book that so carefully explained their program of recovery. While these real-time documents provide the most unassailable evidence for what happened in Alcoholics Anonymous between late 1934 and early 1939, that history is further embellished by the later writings and statements of four early participants in the story: Bill Wilson, AA's founder; Ebby Thatcher, the man who first exposed Bill to the ideas that led to the creation of AA; Jim Burwell, an early atheistic member of AA; and Ruth Hawk, AA's first secretary. The word embellished is used here deliberately to emphasize the fact that each of these four major eyewitnesses has proven to be unreliable, to one degree or another, once their testimony is critically compared with the available archived materials. This should not be surprising. At best, memory is a defective and self-deceptive faculty. Attention is not always paid, and when it is, dates are regularly misremembered, while details are forgotten, left out, or compounded beyond recognition. Events are frequently too unimportant to be remembered accurately, if at all, and sometimes the unvarnished truth is just too painful or embarrassing to be told. And, perhaps most of all in relation to this present history, there is the human tendency to modify memories so that they more positively reflect later realities. We seem to naturally need to create a smooth story that neatly fits what happened into where we are now. This frequent lack of accuracy is found not only among these four most prominent early narrators, but also in the later recollections of other early AA members. This is not meant to impugn everything that was said at some distance from the actual events, but knowing how defective and creative memory can be demands that we check and, if possible, correct those errors by comparing them with the more reliable, more believable evidence provided by contemporary documentation. In short, any portrayal of the Big Book's history that relies solely on AA's well-worn stories is doomed to tell an inaccurate tale. In contrast, the history presented here is, whenever possible, but alas, lacking sufficient sources, not always, based on a critical reading and judicious collation of contemporary evidence rather than later recollections. As such, the story that emerges frequently contradicts the memory-based recollections that have assumed such a dominant place in AA's popularly accepted history. However uncomfortable this may be for some devoted AA readers, what follows here is definitely much closer to what really happened, the historian's ever-elusive goal, than to many of those later, more familiar stories. Bill Wilson, a consummate storyteller. The primary revelation from this kind of critical research and investigation is that Bill Wilson, the man who contributed more factual information than anyone else to the traditional story of AA, was by far the worst offender when it came to accuracy regarding that early history. This may sound harsh to Wilson's many worshipful admirers in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it is an undeniable fact, as will be shown repeatedly. Wilson's divergence from the truth was so common and so pervasive that it can only be compared to a dark cloud looming over any attempt to write an accurate history of AA's early years, obscuring and even falsifying what happened at several key points in the story. Bill was a consummate storyteller, and his stories were, almost always, liberal simplifications of the facts. Some of them, on closer examination, exhibit a casual and even blatant disregard for anything approaching historical accuracy. On one level, this is understandable. Facts are messy things, and they